The Milky Way galaxy, as it turned out, was a complete and utter mess. Not in the physical sense stars and planets were where they should be, black holes continued to do their black hole thing, and cosmic dust remained suitably dusty. No. The problem was with the residents. You see, once a species develops faster than light travel, they inevitably bump into other species with the same technology. And as history has repeatedly demonstrated across 12 galaxies and counting, the first meeting between two intelligent species typically goes one of three ways. Somebody gets conquered, somebody gets eaten, or in the rarest of cases, somebody gets invited to join a pretentious interstellar governing body with too many committees and not enough action. The Galactic Council of Associated Species, or GCAS, pronounced exactly like someone clearing phlegm from their throat, had been established roughly 20,000 Earth years ago. Its founding principle was simple. Let's not kill each other if we can help it. This was considered revolutionary at the time. The council headquarters occupied an artificial ring world orbiting a pleasant yellow star, chosen specifically because nobody wanted the real estate for anything else. Council High Arbiter Zlex Norpal, a gelatinous being from the methane swamps of Telunavi, oozed anxiously across the council chamber's central platform. His 12 sensory stalks waved in clear distress as he addressed the assembled delegates. Order. I demand order. Zlex gurgled through his speech synthesizer. The situation in the Orion Spur has escalated beyond acceptable parameters. The chamber, filled with over 400 representatives from across the galaxy, erupted into a cacophony of clicks, whistles, telepathic outbursts, and one particularly loud belch. The gaseous entities of Betelgeuse communicated primarily through precisely modulated eructations. The Vrexcon and Pledonians are one misunderstanding away from mutual annihilation, continued Zlex. The Quantum Hive has annexed 3 formerly neutral systems. The Arcturian Trading Consortium is price-gouging antimatter again. And those blasted Syrians keep broadcasting their mating rituals on emergency channels. Ambassador Trillium, representing the sentient plant collective from Proxima Centauri b, rustled her leaves in obvious frustration. We've deployed peacekeeping forces 6 times. All 6 missions have failed. Perhaps it's time to admit that our approach isn't working. What approach? Shouted Ambassador KZC to the Silicon Consciousness. We send strongly worded communiques, followed by sanctions that nobody enforces, followed by peacekeepers who have no actual authority. It's all theater. Lex's gelatinous body rippled with resignation. The Council requires a new strategy. We need peacekeepers who can actually keep peace. Right from the back of the chamber, a small voice spoke up. Ambassador Messar-18 of the Feline Confederacy, a species known for their reticence and exceptional observational skills, cleared his throat. Perhaps. Messar-18 purred. We've been looking in the wrong places. Explain, demanded Zlex. There's a species in Sector 8472, System Sol. 3rd planet. They're primitive, only recently achieved basic spaceflight, but they possess unique qualities. What species is this? Asked Ambassador Trillium. They call themselves humans. A confused murmur swept through the chamber. Never heard of them, gurgled Zlex. Precisely, said Messar-18, his whiskers twitching in what passed for a smile among his kind. And that, High Arbiter, is exactly why they might be our solution. Captain Jack Novak was having, as he eloquently put it to his first officer, a day that makes me wish I'd pursued my childhood dream of becoming a professional pillow tester. The underscore in probable success underscore, a retrofitted cargo hauler serving as humanity's first venture into deep space exploration, drifted without power approximately 14 light-years from Earth. This was 13.99 light-years farther than humans had ever traveled before, which made their current predicament particularly inconvenient. Status report. Kamala, Jack asked, rubbing his temples. Commander Kamala Rodriguez, the ship's engineer and first officer, looked up from her diagnostic panel with an expression that suggested she was mentally calculating how much paperwork would be involved if she jettisoned her captain into space. Same as 5 minutes ago, Captain. Main power core is fried. Backup systems are at 12%. Life support will last about 72 more hours. And that weird purple goo from the galley has now achieved sentience and is demanding voting rights. I was joking about that last part, she added after seeing Jack's alarmed expression. Lieutenant Marcus Wong, the ship's exobiologist and communications officer, swiveled away from his console. Look on the bright side, Captain. We might be the first humans to die this far from Earth. That's got to count for something in the history books. Your optimism is noted, Lieutenant, Jack replied dryly. Any progress contacting Earth? Our comms can barely reach the coffee machine in the mess hall, let alone home, Marcus said, but I am picking up something. Jack perked up. Define something. A signal. Not one of ours. It's structured, artificial. The bridge fell silent. Are you saying, Jack began slowly, that we might be receiving an alien transmission? Either that or the coffee machine is finally making its move, Marcus replied, fingers flying across his console. The signal's getting stronger. I think something's approaching. The ship's view screen flickered to life, drawing power from emergency reserves. Against the backdrop of unfamiliar stars, a shape appeared sleek, iridescent, and unmistakably constructed. Is that? Kamala whispered. A spaceship, Jack finished. And definitely not one of ours. What happened next would later be described in the official mission log as first contact, in Jack's personal journal as the most ridiculous Tuesday ever, and in Galactic records as the incident that made everyone reconsider everything. An alien vessel, which resembled nothing so much as a disco ball with engines, positioned itself alongside the _improbable success _. A beam of soft blue light enveloped their ship, and suddenly the power core hummed back to life. They fixed us? Kamala said incredulously, checking her readings. Before anyone could respond, the view screen changed to show the interior of the other vessel. A being that looked like the evolutionary midpoint between a giraffe and a chandelier gazed at them, with multiple eyes arranged in a spiral pattern. Greetings, humans, it said in perfect English, which was the first of many surprises. I am Ambassador Lazik Peak of the Galactic Council. We've been observing your species for some time, and your current predicament presents an opportunity we cannot ignore. Jack, drawing on his extensive diplomatic training, which consisted entirely of watching old sci-fi shows during his academy days, straightened his uniform and replied, We come in peace? The alien made a sound that might have been a laugh or possibly indigestion. Yes, Captain Novak. That's precisely the problem. You humans have a peculiar relationship with the concept of peace. We find it fascinating. How do you know my name? Jack asked, ignoring the implied criticism. We know many things about humans, as Zikpeak replied, your resilience, your adaptability, your bizarre fixation with fermenting perfectly good beverages until they become intoxicants. But most importantly, your unique approach to conflict resolution. Marcus leaned toward Jack. I think we're being headhunted, Captain. Ambassador, Jack said carefully, what exactly do you want from us? Want? Oh, nothing complicated. We merely wish to recruit your species as the peacekeepers of the galaxy. There was a moment of silence, broken only by the sound of Marcus choking on his coffee. I'm sorry, Jack said. Did you say peacekeepers of the galaxy? Us? Humans? The species that still can't agree on whether pineapple belongs on pizza? Precisely because of that, Zikpeak replied with what might have been enthusiasm. You see, Captain, humans possess qualities that make you uniquely suited for the role. You're stubborn yet flexible, aggressive yet compassionate, logical yet wildly imaginative. Most importantly, you're the only species we've encountered that can be utterly, profoundly wrong about something and still convince others you might be right. That's called politics, Kamala muttered. Indeed, Zikpeak exclaimed. And the galaxy is in desperate need of politicians who can actually resolve conflicts rather than just profit from them. Jack exchanged glances with his crew. This seems like a decision that should involve more than just the three of us. Of course, the ambassador agreed. Consider this merely an introduction. Your ship will be escorted to the council headquarters, where you can represent your species in further discussions. That is, if you're willing? Jack thought about their mission: explore, discover, make contact. He thought about humanity's long history of both creating and solving problems. He thought about how absolutely insane this story would sound when they reported back to Earth. Then he grinned. "Ambassador, you've got yourself a deal to lead the way." As their ships prepared to depart, Marcus leaned over again. "Captain, are you sure about this? For all we know, we're being taken to be their dinner. If they wanted to eat us, they wouldn't have fixed our ship first," Jack reasoned. "Besides, didn't you join this mission for adventure?" "Adventure, yes. Becoming galactic peacekeepers? That wasn't in the brochure." Jack's grin widened. "Consider it a promotion." The Galactic Council headquarters, as it turned out, wasn't the sterile, chrome-plated expanse of human science fiction. Instead, it resembled what might happen if you gave a 6-year-old unlimited resources and told them to build the ultimate treehouse, assuming the tree was a massive artificial ring world and the 6-year-old had multiple tentacles and a poor understanding of right angles. "This is eclectic," Jack commented as they were escorted through corridors that seemed to defy basic principles of geometry. "The council facility was designed by committee," explained their guide, a hovering spherical being named Orb, apparently. Some species were more creative than others when it came to naming. 427 species contributed architectural elements. The resulting compromises are why some corridors lead to dimensional pockets and why the cafeteria occasionally migrates to different levels. The human delegation expanded now to include Dr. Elena Petrova, their physician, and Lieutenant Commander Flynn O'Malley. Their security chief followed Orb into what appeared to be the council's main chamber. The massive room contained representatives from more species than humans had previously imagined possible, arranged in concentric rings around a central platform. "Is that a talking cloud?" Elena whispered, pointing discreetly at a wispy formation occupying one of the higher seats. "The nebulons," Orb confirmed. "They're gaseous collective intelligences, brilliant mathematicians, terrible at karaoke." High arbiters Lex Norpal oozed to the center of the platform as the humans were ushered to designated seats. Jack couldn't help but notice they were positioned at the exact center of the chamber, like specimens under a microscope. "Representatives of Earth," Zlex began, his synthesized voice reverberating throughout the chamber. "Your presence here is unprecedented. Never before has a species been invited to join the peacekeeping forces before achieving level 3 interstellar development status." "What level are we currently?" Jack asked. "Barely level 1, Zlex replied. "You've only just figured out how to leave your own solar system without immediately dying." "Thanks for the vote of confidence," muttered Flynn. However, Zlex continued, "Exceptional circumstances call for exceptional measures. The galaxy is facing a crisis of unprecedented proportions. Traditional diplomatic approaches have failed. We require alternative methods." "And you think humans are the answer?" Elena asked skeptically. Ambassador Mezaratin of the Feline Confederacy stepped forward, his tail swishing in what the humans would later learn was a sign of amusement. "We've been observing Earth for centuries," Mezaratin explained. "Your species possesses a unique trait we call productive irrationality. When faced with problems that have logical solutions, you often choose illogical approaches that somehow work anyway." "That's not a compliment, is it?" Flynn whispered to Jack. "We propose a trial period," Zlex announced, "one of our most pressing but least catastrophic conflicts. If you can resolve it, we will discuss further involvement." Jack stood, feeling the weight of 400 alien gazes. "High Arbiter, my crew and I are explorers, not diplomats. We weren't sent here to—" "Phew." "Captain Novak," interrupted Mezaratin, "did humans build your impressive internet primarily to share knowledge and advance civilization?" Jack blinked at the non sequitur. "Well, technically yes, but in practice it's mostly used for cat videos and arguments with strangers," Martin finished. "Precisely. You created a world-changing technology, then primarily used it to share pictures of my evolutionary cousins and to tell each other they're wrong. That's exactly the kind of thinking we need. Before Jack could formulate a response that wouldn't confirm this unflattering assessment, Zek spoke again. The situation is this. The Blorxians and the Zephyrians have been locked in a trade dispute over crystalline dilithium deposits for 12 cycles. Both species are peaceful by nature but stubborn beyond reason. 3 council mediation teams have failed. The conflict threatens to destabilize a sector containing 17 inhabited worlds. Jack exchanged glances with his crew. Elena shrugged. Marcus looked intrigued. Flynn seemed to be calculating how many aliens he could take in a fight if things went south. Kamala just rolled her eyes. What do we get out of this? Jack asked finally. The chamber erupted in confused murmurs. Zlex's gelatinous form rippled in what might have been surprise. Get out of it. The High Arbiter repeated. Yes, Jack continued. If we're solving your problems, there should be something in it for Earth, right? Trade agreements? Technology? Knowledge? More murmurs, this time with an undercurrent of what sounded like approval. Already negotiating. Nessaratin purred, typical humans. This is exactly why we chose you. After several hours of debate, during which the humans discovered that their universal translators couldn't adequately convey concepts like weekend or overtime pay to many species, an agreement was reached. The humans would attempt to mediate the Blorxian-Zephyrian dispute. In exchange, Earth would receive non-military technological insights and limited trade privileges. 2 days later, the human delegation found themselves on a neutral space station orbiting a gas giant in the disputed sector. The Blorxians, gelatinous cube-shaped beings with voice boxes located in their centers, occupied one side of the conference room. The Zephyrians, winged humanoids with iridescent feathers, occupied the other. Neither side had spoken directly to the other in over 3 years. This is ridiculous, Jack whispered to Kamala as they observed the silent standoff. They're fighting over rocks. Extremely valuable, energy-producing rocks, Kamala corrected. Still, there has to be a solution that doesn't involve this, whatever this is. He gestured at the scene before them, where 2 advanced species were essentially giving each other the silent treatment. Jack stood and approached the conference table. Representatives of Blorx and Zephyria, thank you for agreeing to this mediation. Before we begin formal proceedings, my team and I would like to invite both delegations to join us for a meal. This simple suggestion caused immediate uproar. Apparently, sharing food was considered tantamount to surrender in Blorxian culture, while Zephyrians could only eat in the presence of those they considered equals, which the Blorxians certainly were not. Jack listened to the translators relay these objections, then smiled. Interesting customs. On Earth we have a saying, you catch more flies with honey than with vinegar. Both delegations looked confused. It means, Jack explained, that being nice usually works better than being difficult. Unfortunately, I've just been informed that our ship's chef has prepared a meal using ingredients toxic to both your species. So instead, let's try something else humans are good at, drinking and complaining. 4 hours later, after introducing both species to the concept of poker, which the Blorxians excelled at due to their naturally expressionless faces, and the human tradition of venting about work problems, which the Zephyrians embraced with surprising enthusiasm, Jack proposed a solution. An alternate mining rights on a 5-year rotation, with profits from each cycle split 60/40 in favor of the mining party. To everyone's surprise, especially the council observers monitoring from a distance, both sides agreed. How did you do that? Orb demanded as the humans prepared to return to council headquarters. Our best negotiators tried for years. We didn't try to solve their actual problem, Flynn explained with a shrug. We gave them something new to focus on each other as people, not as enemies. That's not logical, Orb protested. Welcome to humanity, Jack replied with a grin. Logic is just one tool in our toolbox, and sometimes the hammer of irrational socialization works better. Word of the humans' unorthodox success spread quickly throughout the council. Before they knew it, The crew of the _improbable success found themselves becoming the Council's go-to mediators for conflicts that had resisted traditional resolution. And their methods varied wildly from case to case. When the Silicon Consciousness and the organic collective of Betelgeuse IV couldn't agree on terraforming rights, Elena introduced them to the concept of timeshares. When the quantum hive threatened to consume the resources of 3 systems, Marcus convinced them that colonizing uninhabited worlds and flipping them for profit was more efficient than conquest. Not all of their missions were successful, and not all of their solutions were elegant. But their track record was undeniable, and within 6 months, the term human diplomacy had entered the galactic lexicon, though whether it was used as a compliment or an insult depended entirely on who you asked. It was perhaps inevitable that the human streak of diplomatic successes would eventually be tested by something truly catastrophic. That test came in the form of the Vrex-Con-Plutonian conflict, a situation so volatile that the council chamber practically vibrated with tension when it was discussed. "This isn't like your previous assignments," High Arbiters Lex warned the human team, now expanded to include representatives from various Earth nations. "These species have been enemies for millennia. Their hatred is foundational to their cultures." "What started it?" asked Jack, reviewing the briefing materials. "No one remembers," admitted Ambassador Trillium. "Their historical records cite different catalysts. What matters is that both species are now heavily armed, occupy neighboring regions of space, and appear to be preparing for all-out war." "And if that happens?" Kamala questioned. "Conservative estimates suggest casualties in the billions." Zlex replied somberly. "Dozens of worlds rendered uninhabitable. Potential collapse of trade routes affecting a quarter of the galaxy." Jack whistled softly. "No pressure, then." The Vrexcon were reptilian, cold-blooded in both the literal and figurative sense, with a hierarchical society that prized order above all else. The Plutonians were mammalian hive minds, each individual hosting a collective consciousness that valued emotional consensus. Beyond these basic facts, the humans quickly discovered the situation was even more complex than they'd been told. "They've tried to annihilate each other 3 times in recorded history," Marcus explained during their strategy session aboard the human diplomatic vessel. The newly commissioned _reasonable doubt _. Each time, other powers intervened to prevent mutual destruction. "So what's different now?" asked Elena. "Technology," Flynn replied grimly. "Both sides have developed weapons that could bypass standard defensive systems. A first strike from either side would be devastating, potentially triggering an immediate counterattack." "Mutually assured destruction," Jack murmured. "Humans know a thing or two about that concept." For 2 weeks, the humans attempted standard diplomatic approaches. They arranged meetings that neither side attended. They proposed compromises that were immediately rejected. They even tried separate negotiations, only to discover that both species refused to discuss peace under any circumstances. "This is hopeless," Kamala declared after their latest failure. "They don't want resolution. They want victory." Jack paced the conference room, uncharacteristically quiet. Finally, he stopped and looked at his team. "We've been approaching this all wrong," he said. "We can't make them want peace because peace isn't their goal. We need to change the parameters of the conflict itself." "How exactly do we do that?" Flynn asked skeptically. "We give them a common enemy," Jack replied. Yes. What followed was perhaps the most audacious plan in the brief history of human galactic diplomacy, a plan so outrageous that when Jack presented it to the council, Jack's nearly liquefied with shock. "You want to do what?" the High Arbiter exclaimed. "Provoke both species simultaneously," Jack repeated calmly. "Make them so angry at humans that they temporarily forget their hatred for each other." "That's suicide," protested Ambassador KZT. "Not quite," Jack said. "We've analyzed their cultural taboos and diplomatic protocols. We know exactly which buttons to push to make them furious without triggering immediate violence. And once they're united in their anger toward humans," Messaritin began, his whiskers twitching as he grasped the concept. "We give them a way to save face by working together to defeat us," Jack finished. The council reluctantly approved the plan, though not without multiple clauses indemnifying them against the potential extinction of the human diplomatic corps. Operation Common Enemy began with simultaneous transmissions to the leadership of both species. To the Rex Con, the humans described the Pledonians using terminology that, according to their cultural database, implied they were spiritually enlightened beings of superior moral character, the highest insult possible in Rex Con society, which valued practical materialism above all. To the Pledonians, they presented fabricated evidence suggesting the Rex Con had achieved perfect emotional harmony without the need for elective consciousness, effectively stating that their evolutionary path was superior and the Pledonian way of life was obsolete. Both species reacted exactly as expected, with incandescent rage directed at the presumptuous humans. Phase 1 complete, Jack reported as furious transmissions flooded their communication systems. Both species have now demanded we present ourselves for cultural readjustment, which I'm pretty sure is a euphemism for something unpleasant. Now comes the tricky part, Kamala noted. We need them angry enough to cooperate against us, but not so angry they just blow us up. Jack nodded. That's why we're implementing Phase 2, the Joint Tribunal. In what would later be recognized as a masterpiece of manipulative diplomacy, Jack proposed that both species send representatives to judge humanity's cultural crimes. The location: a neutral station in disputed territory. The format: a joint proceeding where both species would need to agree on humanity's punishment. To everyone's surprise, both the Vrexcon and Pledonians agreed, each presumably planning to use the tribunal to humiliate the humans before destroying them. What they didn't expect was Jack's opening statement. Representatives of the Vrexcon and Pledonian peoples, he began, standing before the assembled aliens with remarkable calm. Before you pass judgment, I wish to clarify something. Everything we told you was a lie. A murmur ran through both delegations. We deliberately insulted both your cultures to bring you together in this room, Jack continued. You've been trying to destroy each other for so long that you've forgotten how to talk. Sometimes it takes an outside perspective to see how ridiculous a situation has become. The Vrexcon's supreme adjudicator hissed menacingly. You admit to deception and cultural interference. These are serious crimes. Yes, Jack agreed. And now you have something in common, a mutual grievance against humans. The question is, what will you do with this opportunity? For a tense moment it seemed the plan might backfire spectacularly. Then, a Pledonian elder spoke, her voice resonating with the harmony of her collective consciousness. The human has a valid point. We have not truly negotiated in generations. Negotiation implies possible compromise, the Vrexcon adjudicator replied coldly. Our positions are irreconcilable. Are they? Jack interrupted. You both want the same thing: security, prosperity, and cultural preservation. Your methods differ, but your goals are identical. What followed was 12 hours of the most intense diplomatic exchange in recorded galactic history. The humans positioned themselves as mediators rather than defendants, guiding the conversation away from mutual accusations and toward practical concerns. By the end, something remarkable had occurred. The Vrexcon and Pledonians weren't exactly friendly, but they were talking, actually talking, not just exchanging threats. We have agreement on preliminary non-aggression protocols, the Vrexcon adjudicator announced, sounding almost surprised. And a framework for border demilitarization, added the Pledonian elder. Jack allowed himself a small smile. And what about our punishment for cultural interference? The two alien leaders exchanged what might have been knowing glances. We sentence humanity, the Vrexcon adjudicator declared, to continue serving as intermediaries between our peoples for no less than 5 cycles. Your penalty is to finish what you've started. As the human team departed the station, Marcus shook his head in amazement. Did we just get punished by being forced to do our job? I think, Jack replied, we just witnessed the first example of Vrexcon Pledonian humor. Progress indeed. News of the Vrexcon Pledonian negotiations spread rapidly throughout the galaxy. What had seemed impossible mere weeks before was now cautiously developing into a sustainable peace process. The humans, rather than being executed for their audacity, found themselves in unprecedented demand. "I don't understand," complained Flynn during one of their rare breaks between missions. "All we did was trick two species into talking to each other. How is that considered brilliant diplomacy?" "Because," explained Elena, who had been studying galactic political science in her spare time, "most species approach conflict resolution through logic, tradition, or rigid protocols. We're using psychology, emotion, and sometimes outright manipulation. In other words," added Kamala, "we fight dirty. We fight human," Jack corrected. And apparently that's exactly what the galaxy needed. The Galactic Council, initially skeptical of the humans' unorthodox methods, now embraced what they termed the human approach to galactic harmony, though Jack preferred to call it Operation Common Sense. The principles were deceptively simple. 1. Identify what the conflicting parties actually want, not what they say they want. 2. Find common ground, even if it's just mutual annoyance at humans. 3. Create situations where cooperation becomes more advantageous than conflict. 4. When all else fails, introduce concepts so bizarre that both sides unite in confusion. This last principle proved particularly effective when dealing with the quantum hive's expansionist tendencies. Rather than attempting to contain their territorial growth through traditional sanctions or military deterrence, the humans introduced them to capitalism. "Let me get this straight," the hive coordinator had buzzed incredulously. "Instead of conquering planets through force, we could purchase them." "Exactly," Jack confirmed. "And then develop them and sell them at a profit. It's called real estate development, and it's much more efficient than conquest. No resistance to overcome, no infrastructure to rebuild, and most importantly, no galactic sanctions reducing your profit margins." The concept of owning something without having to fight for it was so novel to the quantum hive that they immediately established the galaxy's first interstellar property development corporation, complete with sleek marketing materials promising pre-colonized worlds at post-conquest prices. When the Arcturian Trading Consortium continued price gouging essential resources, the humans didn't impose regulations, they introduced competitors. By helping previously overlooked species bring their unique resources to market, they created the first genuinely competitive galactic economy. "It's not just about solving individual conflicts," Jack explained to the Council during one of their regular briefings. "It's about changing the underlying dynamics that create conflicts in the first place." High Arbiter's Lex, who had begun to develop something resembling respect for the humans, oozed thoughtfully. "You're not just applying bandages, you're performing surgery on the galactic body politic." "That's a disturbing but accurate metaphor," Jack agreed. "The galaxy doesn't need more rules and regulations. It needs systems that make cooperation naturally advantageous." The humans' most ambitious project came in response to the ongoing dispute between the silicon consciousness and organic species throughout the galaxy. Rather than trying to resolve specific incidents, Jack proposed something radical: the Galactic Exchange Program. "It's simple," he explained to skeptical representatives from both sides. "Members of the silicon consciousness temporarily inhabit organic bodies, while organic minds are temporarily uploaded to silicon substrates. Not permanently, just long enough to gain perspective." "Impossible," declared the Silicon Prime Unit. "Organic bodies are inefficient and disgusting." "And silicon minds are cold and unfeeling," countered the Organic Collective representative. "Exactly why you should try them," Jack replied with a grin. "Nothing builds empathy like walking a mile in someone else's, well, body or processor, as the case may be." To everyone's surprise, a small number of volunteers from both sides agreed to the experiment. The results were transformative. Silicon beings experiencing organic emotions for the first time developed new appreciation for the creativity that arose from biological imperatives. Organic minds, freed from biological constraints, discovered the elegant precision of silicon thought processes. Within a year, a hybrid culture began to emerge, beings who regularly transitioned between organic and silicon states, combining the best aspects of both. They called themselves the Synthesis, and they quickly became the galaxy's most effective mediators next to humans themselves. "You've created an entirely new form of existence," marveled Ambassador Trillium during a private conversation with Jack. Even we, who have observed countless species for millennia, never imagined such a possibility. Jack shrugged. Humans have been imagining it for centuries in our science fiction. We just helped make it reality. That may be your species' greatest strength, Trillium rustled thoughtfully. You imagine impossible things so vividly that you eventually make them possible. As the human diplomatic corps expanded, incorporating more representatives from Earth's diverse cultures, their influence spread throughout the galaxy. They didn't always succeed. Some conflicts proved too deeply rooted, even for human creativity, but their track record was impressive enough that calling in the humans became galactic shorthand for addressing supposedly intractable problems. And through it all, they maintained their uniquely human approach, part logic, part emotion, part calculated chaos, and an inexplicable ability to find solutions precisely because they weren't bound by conventional wisdom. We're making this up as we go along, Jack confessed to Kamala after a particularly challenging negotiation. Sometimes I wonder if we're qualified to be doing any of this. That's exactly why it works, she replied with a smile. No one expects the Spanish Inquisition. Jack raised an eyebrow. Did you just quote Monty Python in the context of interstellar diplomacy? See. Unexpected. Human. Effective. 5 years after the crew of the _improbable success _first stumbled into galactic politics, Captain Jack Novak stood before the assembled Galactic Council for a milestone ceremony. The chamber, once intimidating in its alien grandeur, now felt almost familiar. Today, announced High Arbiter Zlex, his gelatinous form glowing with faunal bioluminescence, we recognize and formalize humanity's role in galactic affairs. No longer are humans merely experimental peacekeepers or unconventional mediators. Today, Earth becomes a full member of the Galactic Council of Associated Species, and humans are officially designated as the diplomatic corps of the Galactic Peace Initiative. The chamber erupted in the diverse sounds of hundreds of species expressing approval: clicks, whistles, subsonic rumbles, telepathic bursts of emotion, and even traditional applause from those species possessing appendages capable of clapping. Jack, dressed in the newly designed uniform of Earth's diplomatic service, inclined his head in acknowledgement. Behind him stood not just his original crew, but dozens of human representatives from across Earth: diplomats, scientists, linguists, and cultural specialists who had joined the expanding human presence in galactic affairs. On behalf of Earth and humanity, we accept this honor with gratitude and humility, Jack responded, his voice carrying throughout the chamber. 5 years ago, we were simply lost explorers with a broken ship. Today, we stand as partners in a community spanning thousands of worlds. Ambassador Mesaratin, whose initial suggestion had started this unlikely journey, stepped forward. Humans have taught us much, not least that peace is not merely the absence of conflict, but the presence of creative cooperation. And occasionally the presence of creative chaos, added Ambassador KZT of the Silicon Consciousness, and who had developed what could only be described as a sense of humor since the establishment of the synthesis. Jack smiled. We've made mistakes along the way. We've stumbled through cultural misunderstandings, committed diplomatic faux pas that will probably become legendary, and occasionally solved problems in ways that created new ones. Like the time you introduced the concept of reality entertainment programming to the Nebulons, Zlex noted dryly. They're still broadcasting their internal molecular rearrangements across 3 sectors. I'll complete Section 6 from where it left off. I maintain that Extreme Nebula Makeover is educational programming, Jack replied with mock seriousness. Just because billions of viewers tune in weekly to watch cloud formations reshape themselves doesn't make it any less scientific. Laughter rippled through the chamber, another concept humans had inadvertently introduced to species who previously found no value in vocalizing amusement. Perhaps most remarkable, continued Zlex, is how quickly humanity has adapted to galactic society. Your species has gone from barely achieving spaceflight to becoming essential mediators in just 5 years. It defies all developmental models. That's because your models assume logical progression. Kamala interjected from her position behind Jack, Humans tend to advance in chaotic spurts, usually when someone tells us something is impossible. Indeed, agreed Ambassador Trillium, rustling her leaves thoughtfully. Which is why we've decided to appoint humans as the official peacekeepers of the ridiculous. Jack blinked. I'm sorry, the what now? It's a ceremonial title, Zlex explained, his gelatinous form rippling with what might have been embarrassment, but also a practical designation. When conventional diplomacy fails when disputes seem beyond rational resolution, that's when we call in the humans. You're essentially the galactic equivalent of percussive maintenance, Marcus whispered to Jack. When nothing else works, hit it with a human and see what happens. The formal ceremony concluded with the unveiling of Earth's official council seal, a design showing human hands of various skin tones joined together, supporting a stylized galaxy. Beneath it, in multiple languages, was inscribed, "When all else fails, try something ridiculous." Later, at the reception, another human tradition eagerly adopted by species capable of consuming refreshments, Jack found himself cornered by a group of younger diplomats from various worlds. "Is it true," asked an eager Zephyrian fledgling, "that humans resolved the Arcturian trade crisis by introducing them to something called happy hour?" Jack laughed. "Partially true. We introduced the concept of time-limited discounts. The Arcturians were so fascinated by the temporary price reduction model that they restructured their entire economy around it." "And did you really teach the Quantum Hive how to play poker?" They questioned a silicon-based being. "That was Flynn's doing," Jack admitted. "Turns out hive minds make terrible poker players. They can't bluff worth a damn when every part of the collective knows the cards." As the evening progressed, Jack found a quiet moment with Ambassador Naratin, whose initial suggestion had started humanity's unlikely journey to galactic significance. "I've always wondered," Jack said, sipping a beverage that approximated champagne but glowed faintly blue. "Why did you suggest humans in the first place? We weren't even on the galactic radar." Naratin's whiskers twitched in what Jack had come to recognize as a feline smile. "Do you know what my species valued most about Earth when we first discovered it? Our technology? Our culture? Your cats," Naratin replied simply. "Small, furry creatures that somehow convinced an apex predator species to provide food, shelter, and affection while demanding nothing in return except the occasional chin scratch." Jack stared. "You're saying you chose humanity because we're cat people?" "I'm saying," Naratin clarified, "that any species capable of being so early manipulated by an adorable smaller species while believing themselves to be in charge has exactly the right psychology to handle galactic diplomacy." Jack couldn't help but laugh. "So the fate of the galaxy was decided because cats are cute?" "The universe," Naratin said with absolute seriousness, "runs on principles far stranger than most beings are comfortable admitting." As the celebration continued around them, Jack gazed out at the vast starscape visible through the council chamber's transparent dome. Somewhere out there, another human expedition was making first contact with a previously unknown species. On a dozen worlds, human diplomats were mediating conflicts that had once seemed irresolvable. And back on Earth, humanity was adjusting to the reality that they were not alone in the universe, and more surprisingly, that they were actually good at helping keep the peace. Captain Kamala approached, interrupting his thoughts. "The VrexCon ambassador wants to know if the rumor is true." "Which rumor?" Jack asked warily. "That humans are planning to introduce the concept of vacation to the galaxy at large. Apparently the idea of voluntarily ceasing productive work to do nothing has several species in a philosophical crisis." Jack grinned. "Tell him we're just getting started. Wait until they hear about weekends, public holidays, and calling in sick when you're just tired." As Kamala departed on her diplomatic mission, Jack raised his glowing blue not quite champagne in a silent toast to the absurdity of it all. Humans, the species that still argued about pineapple on pizza, had somehow become the peacekeepers of the galaxy. Not through superior technology or military might, but through their uniquely human blend of creativity, stubbornness, and the ability to find solutions precisely because they weren't looking in the right places. The universe, it seemed, would never be the same again. And from humanity's perspective, that was perfectly fine after all. Adaptation was what they did best. At that and making things up as they went along. Which, as it turned out, was exactly what the galaxy needed. Retriclode can make mistakes. Please double-check responses.